Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Ethics First live talks that where we come every week and discuss lively topics on surrounding the topic of ethics and how ethics first organizations, applications, and companies, people, products can work together to bring an environment where ethics is at the forefront of everything that we do and think about. So today I am going to be the one hosting this. Usually Shilpi does this. She had to leave another event that was unavoidable today. So here with me is our Sam, and you all know Sam is our one of a member of our leadership team. She is NLP expert and a teacher of languages. So welcome, Sam.
Hi, good evening. Hi, Susanna. Welcome. It's great to be here. Another Ethics First live event, and yeah, the topic's really going to be fun to discuss.
Yeah,
Yeah,
why
really
don't you
interesting.
introduce our topic today?
Yeah, absolutely. So this evening's going to be, well, this afternoon, depending on the time zone, we're focusing on ethics first and ethics of applications in healthcare. And we're going to be looking at regulation and what applications are out there, the vulnerabilities around it, and we're going to be looking at how it could be used in a supportive way, or not, as the case may be. So yeah, that's the topic.
Yeah, that is the topic. I mean, we all use healthcare apps on our phone and it's on our watches now. Some of you may own a wearable watch like a Apple Watch or, Samsung Watch or a Fitbit or any of those, healthcare tracking apps that are on your wearable devices, as well as on our phone and on our laptops. And there are like so many things that can track your steps, your activity level, your heart rate, and there are apps that track your. You can take input from your blood pressure machine. At my home, my mom uses a blood pressure machine. That brand has its own app, and it seems after we upgraded to the new iOS, that data was being pulled from that app into the healthcare you know app that Apple
Mm.
has, and it was automatically gathering all the data from there. It was a little creepy. Then you had to go back to that app and then take out that information because it was now tracking our blood pressure levels. But they have given you all those options where you can and cannot give access to other apps, the other medical apps. But to me, this is an area of concern for me because now my parents use their medical institution also uses an app in which to schedule all their appointments, video appointments, the last 2 years. So that app is also there, and Apple is giving me a list of all those apps in the Apple Healthcare record and asking, do you want to connect all the data from all of this?
Mm.
So I'm just wondering here, what are the regulations that are surrounding healthcare apps? Sam, do you have any idea?
Yeah, it's a really good point about monitoring patient data. I think from my research and just having a look at online and our papers, I've not found that much around specific regulations that govern the data that's captured on applications, particularly for monitoring health data and patient data. We know that there's significant amount of legislation in place in the UK and Europe when it comes to Data Protection Act 2018, and we know that we have GDPR in place in the EU. But I feel from what I've seen that there isn't significant rigorous legislation that covers this, and it's a grey area. And while we focus on security and data security, we've actually not focused very little of our time on the ethics of bioethics and data. So yeah,
Yes, that.
definitely there's a space there. There's a gap there, I think.
Yeah, it is. That is what I also found out. Like, there's the GDPR, as you said, and all of those regulations cover personal data and privacy and all of those things. But in terms of healthcare, these healthcare apps aggregate the data, the information that they have on you to create a health profile of you to give you whether they say it's based on research that they are accumulating and aggregating information from different sources to say, if you haven't walked this many steps, if you haven't slept this many hours, if you haven't done this, if you haven't drank water, or your blood pressure if this is low, whatever it
Yeah.
is, that this it's it's giving you an information and trying to tell you that all of these things make sure that you are makes you either a healthy person or an unhealthy person, or
Mm.
puts you on the borderline to this. So it's actually giving you medical information, medical feedback back to you. So that is such an a very concerning thing to me, because that is a feedback. I am getting this feedback from another person, that is telling me that that another app, or an individual, that is entity, that is giving me this information. So I may probably decide to see it as, give it as validity as a doctor or a health institution. Many
Yes.
people do that, and that to me is very manipulative in a way. It is not actually very supportive of me. And I think we have a few comments here. There's a LinkedIn user saying, I don't believe there is any specific regulation in this area. Of course, we agree. There are examples of sensors and shoes also sending data. Mahesh is saying that to health
Right.
provider. Oh my goodness. Shoes. I
Right.
I haven't seen that. But that, yeah, that could, like, track your pressure, how much pressure you are putting on the ground, and whether you are using your heel or the front of your foot. I mean, yeah, I could
Yeah,
see
valid.
use cases for that, whether the posture is maintained. People who walk putting more pressure on their heels may not be walking at the right posture, and all of those things are there. But what I am concerned about is how much of this is the biofeedback back to us as individuals, where we are internalizing all of this information and thinking that this is a validated information coming from another uh, knowledgeable entity, like a physician or medical institution. And that to me is the part where that requires more regulation. So some of our we had another a couple of questions that Shilpi usually has written out for us. It is vulnerability, trust, manipulation. What are the key concepts of the ethical evaluation of for-profit health apps? So in terms of for-profit health apps, all of them I think are for-profit health apps,
Mm.
because even Fitbit is some, I don't want to name all names, but all of those health tracking apps and devices that are being, introduced into the market
Yeah.
are also all very for profit. Our medical institution is also for profit. That is my opinion. It's not a non-profit thing, but I
Mm.
think we have so many stringent regulations on how medical,
Mm.
services should be distributed, and how it should be, given out to people. But that kind of regulation is not there in the for-profit health apps. What do you think? What are the vulnerabilities that you think, Sam?
No, I completely chime with what you're saying. I think from a medical perspective, if you're working in the public sector, data is very much secured internally if it's patient sensitive. But when it comes to commercial apps, the vulnerabilities exist for users across different age groups. I think one of the key vulnerabilities is that actually, as users, we all have apps on our phones, on IoT devices that we use on a daily basis that are stored on cloud servers, through our mobile devices, and they're at risk. That's the vulnerability. Yeah, they could be exposed to. We've talked about this before in previous discussions. Malware, or somebody maybe having access to that data if they wish to. We do often find that we lose this information. We lose these applications. They are IoT devices, and I think that can cause risks and harms as well, potentially. And we've got to be aware of that, and also the fact that data could be then utilized by third parties without permission. So I think they're the main vulnerabilities. And particularly where you talked about your parents as well. I know that there is tracking of data for vulnerable people and vulnerable patients. And I think we just need to be very careful that we are aware of just how much is being utilized and stored, and protect, you know, our parents and our aunts, uncles, and our friends as well from it, by awareness as well. So,
Yeah, you have
yeah,
pointed out one critical area for vulnerability is that data being leaked out and,
yeah,
privacy being violated. But then the other vulnerability that I see as an user who lives with elderly parents is that they trust the information so much. They
yeah,
trust so much more than I do. Like
mm,
when the heart rate monitor, when your Apple Watch tells you that your heart rate is going up, or it's going down, or the beats
yeah,
are low,
yeah.
they trust that more than what they are feeling actually. They
Okay.
trust that information, and they also feel like, oh, something is now wrong with me. So it's like a biofeedback to
Okay.
them
Mm,
without knowing that there could be a glitch here. There could be these devices are not so accurate in how they track movement, and when you move your arms up, it can show a spike in your
yeah.
heart rate. It's those things that there are, well, people who are populations in our community that do not understand how the technology works but trust the technology so much, and I think that is the biggest vulnerability that I think that comes. And Magesh or somebody else, another LinkedIn user here is saying that the click wrap consent comes at device setup, and but it seems genuine consent is unrealistic. What are you going to do? Say no and be unable to use the device?
Mm,
Yeah, of course.
mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's the thing. It's opt in or opt out, and when you opt out,
yeah.
you are essentially locked out of the device. You are
That's it.
essentially allowed not to use it. And
Mm,
unfortunately, it says LinkedIn user. So if you could put your name, then we can know who you are, and we can acknowledge your comments here. We get that as LinkedIn user only because you may have privacy settings on your LinkedIn account.
That's
And
it's a very good point that you made. Actually, I think often I've been reading. I read a really interesting paper earlier from the. Just bear with me a second. Yeah, I think it was NIH. Yeah, it was from NIH, and they were discussing the fact that actually in the past, what we often did was search for. We had questions often about our health and health related issues, and we'd search online. But now we have an application that replaces that need. But obviously, with that comes the capture of data, and we have a significant number of data points now because there are many apps.
mm,
There's a market, as you said earlier. There's a commercialized arm to it, and I think we have to be very aware of that and sensitive to that. And um, we want to diagnose things. We want to know a little bit more about our health, understand what's going on in our bodies. And I think applications and searches online sometimes become almost like the advice. But we often, like your parents, for example, might feel more trusting if the information is presented to them, when actually the real danger is it becoming diagnosis, and that's not accurate. It's not
yeah,
accurate, and we have highly trained, qualified professionals that we go and see for that, and that's not something we can replace. So,
yes.
yeah,
And I know, so one LinkedIn user is also saying here terms and conditions generally say we are not medical providers and this should
yeah,
not be treated as medical information or substitute.
true.
But the thing is, when you see this information, then you actually bother your medical professionals and you go with a false positive and you ask them more
Uh,
questions. So you overwhelm the system, and then there is that cascading effect that comes through
yeah,
from not having that trust with, oh, my device says this and you say it's okay to ignore that, what is happening to me, and all of those stuff is happens a lot. And what I think that Mahesh also pointed out here is the manipulation that goes back and forth, because this is a predictive analytic that is telling you that based on this data you are, if we are predicting that this is going to happen, or you, if you don't accumulate this many hours of sleep, this is going to affect your mental health or your physical health. That is another level of manipulation according to me. As our question actually asks, what is the manipulation component for health, for profit healthcare apps is that
Mm,
this is part of the surveillance capitalism, right? That is a term that is being used now to say that there are all these healthcare for profit apps that are out there that have a capitalism in mind, that is the derivative end product. So
yes.
that is the manipulation to me. I'm being manipulated by all of these data points. Instead of me using the technology is telling me how I should shape my day. And that is a manipulation, right? And that is psychologically changing the whole community, I think. What do you think? Do you feel you are being manipulated by all the healthcare apps? Is it just me that's bothered?
Yeah. No, I think you make a really good point. I do agree that, I mean, you mentioned surveillance capitalism, and we all know well Zupov's text and her publication on that. And I think it's important to understand that, as with social media, that our data often is referred to as commoditized. It's a commoditized good. It's used by companies, and I do often feel that when I use a wellness app or I'm using my applications, that yes, they can be sometimes a little intrusive, and I think you have to almost start managing it, and it can become a little bit addictive, where you start to track your activities more or less based on feedback, and I think it can affect your behavior. And I think it's a really good point that we shouldn't be using that as a diagnosis tool. We know that sleep is good for us. We know that eating well is good for, and drinking lots of water and fluids is good. Just doing our own, just being aware of our own health. But using these apps is not a replacement for that. And I think we can use our own knowledge of, and also speak to our professionals and GPs and doctors, if we need advice.
Mhm.
But yeah, absolutely. It does tend to, you do find that it will sometimes slightly change the way that you think about your own health, and that's not a positive thing. Yeah, we should know ourselves, enough, you know. So yeah,
So there is a LinkedIn user asking a question: will the app users sell your data to insurers?
insurers. Mm. Um, I this is not something that I've looked at in this particular talk, but I think for third parties, if we look at third parties and application data, potentially, I think there is if your data is available to be sold, then there might be a market there. I haven't looked at the recent data on that, but what do you think, Susanna? Is it something that you feel is a risk for?
There is the potentially a risk, and
Yeah.
there are now laws in place that the HIPAA protection laws that have says that you cannot share this information to your insurers. But
Okay. Hmm.
what about apps that are being developed and put on the app platform itself by insurance companies? I
Uh-huh.
don't know whether that is another area that we need to look at, because I do know that in America here, I know we have Kaiser, we have Stanford, and all of them have
Mhm.
developed with partnership with other agencies, have developed apps, and they are putting that on the platforms, on Android or Apple iOS platforms. So
Right.
I'm not really sure how much, but will personal data be actually connected to your medical record? I think the answer is no.
No. Mm.
I think that is still, at least it's a good thing that the
That's a
answer
good.
is no on that.
Yes.
But it's a murky area that it could change.
I agree with you, Susanna. There, I think. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
This
there
is.
is
Yeah.
another comment that I think was related to HIPAA. HIPAA requires the notice, but there is not a lot of genuine thought around whether the info in the notice is actually helpful or represents a choice.
Mm.
Consent. Have you ever been to a dentist and said, "No, thanks, I don't want to sign to say I saw the policy, I didn't really use, I didn't really see."
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, all of those consent forms and things like that, I really doubt, that people who are at the user end of it are actually paying any attention. What I am worried
Mm.
about is the behavioral impact of all of these healthcare apps. That is a topic of itself, and there is
Yes.
other. We have a lot of questions today, I think.
That's great.
Comments?
No, I would add to that. I do think often when it comes to consent, and we talked about this before, whether it's surfing online on a website or downloading an application, I do think the step, a move forward would be to be quite explicit about what data would be shared with that particular third party and whether you consent to that or not. And I think that's something to look at. I think having a disclaimer available that's really clear will give us that flex, that transparency, which is what we want. Yeah, in my view.
Yes.
But you're right, they can be hidden. Terms and conditions are not clear, and we do often tick without that.
Yeah, even the
Not acknowledging.
regulations that we do check out at the doctor's office,
Yes, yeah,
not something that has been written out with a great deal of thought.
yeah.
I don't think it's there. It's just there, and we are actually, if you are in a doctor's office, you are already under stress. I don't think you are bothering to read that document very well. So another LinkedIn user is saying, do the kind of people who use such apps have a higher likelihood of being active, otherwise not representing the general population, therefore set incorrect metrics for future use? Yes, that is
Yeah.
convenience sampling, right? I mean, that is convenience sampling, that is selective sampling. Uh, you are just, self-selected population, we call that. If I'm going to install a healthcare app that tracks my steps, let's say that's available to everyone, but I'm just, I'm somebody who is more worried about my health. If I do that, if I install that, I'm self-selecting myself for the study. So that I might be actually giving you the wrong metrics, because not everyone who is leading a sedentary lifestyle must not be having that step checker, trend count, showing up in your metrics. But does this make you be more active?
That's
That's
a
a
question.
biofeedback loop, right?
Yeah. Yes, yeah.
Whether it manipulates you to become more active. Here is my personal story. Like, in my healthcare, track steppers tells me that in 2022, I didn't move at all.
Okay, we've had 2 weeks. It's okay. 2 or 3 weeks. It's fine.
2 or 3 weeks.
No, but we've had Christmas and New Year. So.
Yes, in 2020. So that was when the pandemic hit. So it's like
Okay. So, yeah.
everybody, I'm wondering how much of that is reflective of the general population. I don't have that aggregate data. When this tells me I didn't move at all, I tend to feel, oh, geez, I didn't move the whole year. What was I doing sitting all the time? But I don't know, was that same for the entire world? Probably. Everyone was more sedentary
Agreed.
in 2020. So it is actually making me feel a little guilty. But if I had that aggregate information, maybe I would not feel so guilty. That's what I'm thinking.
Like a global view, yeah. I do think though that with particular applications, whether it's your Fitbit or your, for example, your Apple Watch or Strava, or there's lots of other companies that do this. You do find the data that is presented to you in a similar way that you might find with social media. That there's data that is often going to try and encourage you to be more in the outdoors or more active. And yes, I do often feel that you do get put under pressure a little bit, and I think you just have
Yeah,
to
you feel
take a
that
step back. Take a step
guilty
back. Yeah.
manipulation. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. And you don't need that. You just certainly don't want that when you want to just go out for a walk and enjoy being
Yes.
outdoors and just enjoy the weather and take a
Yeah, and if
break.
you feel like,
So
if your goal is 2000 and then you see
yeah.
it's 1500,
No.
do you just run around for another,
Another yes.
round around the park just to get it to that arbitrary number that you set your goal to,
Yes.
without actually making sure I enjoyed the walk, I
Enjoyed it.
feel brisk. It's enough. Why I'm trying to set to a arbitrary number now? All of those things are there. And it's another LinkedIn user is noting here, a friend identified a trend that is blood pressure raised every day around the time he checked his blood pressure.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, no, yeah, that makes sense.
Yes.
But you do find that, I know you, when you, it's probably, like, we've had time off as well during holidays, and I think if you are more sedentary during the holidays and not as active, you do find that, you're not checking as much, you don't see yourself looking at the latest feed. So it's good to sometimes switch off from that, I think, and take a break from it. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, checking your blood pressure is great if you know that you're at the right, it's the right
Yeah,
time to do it. It's the right time. So
yeah,
yeah,
there's
yeah,
actually a well established, finding that, in doctors' offices, your blood pressure is high.
yeah.
They actually test you twice or three times. If it's too high, for my mom it's very high, like
Okay.
she has that white coat syndrome, like regardless, even after coming to the doctor's office and relaxing there, she
Mm,
would get that high blood pressure show up. And that is a common trend for most of us.
mm,
So I
yeah,
think now during COVID, we all have not only a blood pressure machine, an oximeter, and
yeah,
yeah, everything that, it looks like a doctor's office now. And we get into this craziness thinking, oh, I can find out what my oxygen saturation is. But in
yes.
reality, it's more better to see if you are a healthier person, and if you are able to breathe and do all of that, then you don't need to check your oxygen meter. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think a combination of having something that can give you just I guess a little bit of information on how you're doing in terms of the numbers of steps is okay, as long as you have that again information about general health. There's ways of being able to enjoy, your going outdoors, for example, and having a break without having to use an application to do it. Yeah, so definitely combination, I think, of both sometimes. Yeah.
It bit on my dog collar for the day. Yeah, I think, yeah,
That's
I'm sure
yeah.
there could be a Fitbit for your dog also someday.
Yeah,
Maybe it is already there, I don't know.
well, yeah, that's true, definitely. There's,
Yeah.
yes, I hope not, but okay, it could be, okay, could be the future, maybe.
So, what do you think is an unfair commercial practice when it comes to healthcare apps?
Um, I think an unfair commercial practice might be potentially your data being sold to a third party because there's a market value, and that being then used to diagnose things. I think that there's a risk there, like we've talked about before. Certainly completely, unethical in my eyes. Our health data should be absolutely primarily protected, and we know that I'm not just we talked about biofeedback earlier, but the data that that's tracking us could be utilized to other things, not just for marketing purposes. Yeah, but to to change the way that we behave, but and also to potentially put us at risk. Yeah, so definitely.
Yeah, so I think one area that I hope it's not coming into practice is the area of pharmaceutical industry being tied to the healthcare app industry.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
right now, we have that on the televisions.
Mm,
There's a lot of ads here. I don't know how it is in the UK,
hmm.
but here in television, all the new medications will be first shown on the TV.
Hmm.
That there's a new medicine for diabetes. If there's a new beta blocker, there will be a very expensive ad campaign
Okay.
on it, like showing that how that is going to help you improve your life. It has a story like presentation and it almost looks like a PSA, and then it will at the very end in a very fast 1x or 2x sound loop, they will talk about all the side effects of the new drug,
Yeah.
and also the unproven you know data points of that drug.
Hmm.
But that comes at the very end, and it's run in a very fast loop. You can't even really grasp it, but the whole ad is so melodramatic, and
Hmm.
you feel like you will have this glorious life if you take this new drug, and it will be relieved of your symptoms there.
Yes. Yeah.
That is there in the television industry now, but what I'm wondering is, what if all these healthcare apps have a tie-in with the pharmaceutical industry? That's marketed directly to the people without the middleman of the physicians there.
Yeah, very good point.
That comes that I don't know, yeah, if it is there already. I
Hmm.
haven't seen any example of that in the healthcare industry,
Hmm.
but it could be an unfair healthcare practice, in my opinion, commercial practice for healthcare apps.
Hmm. Yeah, I recognize that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
And
I,
dosage is one thing that was picked up earlier by one of the papers I was reading. That if we are to rely on telehealth apps, that it
mhm.
might be that again that not only we're using it for diagnosis, but we're actually using it for informing dosage, and that could put us at risk if we do regularly take medication. Yeah, so I think that's definitely a good follow on. And if that does become something that's an option, then we have to be very careful.
Yeah, Mahesh,
Yeah,
Mahesh R here raises an important question, important point here. I think they might do sell the. This is in response to a prior discussion we had about insurers,
yeah,
you know, in selling the information to the insurers. He thinks they might do that, taking away the private information, PII information,
yeah.
and sell just the metadata.
Okay.
So,
Um,
what do you think? Like, what do you think about selling just the metadata? Is that okay?
um, so
If
when
it
it
is
comes,
not individually connected to you, would it be okay to have this
mm,
information sold to an insurer, and the insurance company is making
mm,
an aggregate decision for this topic?
predictions, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
predictions about behavior, yeah,
predictions,
yeah, yeah,
for
mm,
like maybe your geographic area.
yes, yeah, yeah.
That be okay? I don't think so, because
No, I okay. I've had this is a really interesting discussion. I think first of all, metadata. I mean, we have to define that because
yes,
PII are absolutely off bounds. But what is metadata? What do we include in metadata? We've discussed before. It could be not just names and ages, but also other biometric information, not biometric information, but data about you, demographic information, and that could then lead to targeted advertising, but also products being targeted to you that you maybe don't need or wish for.
hmm,
And yeah, it's an additional stress, particularly on vulnerable people, I think. Yes, and if you haven't got the right information to make the decision, it's a lot of
yes,
pressure. A lot of pressure. I don't. Yeah, we'd have to define what metadata that is, but I certainly think we have to be
yes.
very careful.
And
Yeah,
it could be just from a very low sampling. It may have a
yeah,
very low sampling size,
that's true.
and you
It's
could
true.
be making this generalized, prediction
Yes, true.
that may not generalize to the entire population, right? So that those
Yeah,
kind of things are there in the use of metadata, but unless your metadata is has a very wider collection area, or
yeah,
on a national or a global level,
true.
or takes everyone into consideration, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I
the
think
bias. Yeah, the
it's the
bias.
bias,
Definitely. Yeah,
same
yeah,
problem that we see in AI, we will see
yeah,
here too. It's the
yeah.
bias. Yeah, so I don't I don't know if they do that. That is
Mm,
something we have to look into, but I think as of now, from what I read for in preparation for this talk, the GDPR and the regulations that are here in America and in the European Union
yeah, yeah.
does not allow healthcare apps to sell this data to insurance. That's what I
Mm,
came to the
yes.
conclusion, but I
Yeah.
could be wrong. If
Hmm.
somebody knows anything that has more information on all of these topics, please feel free to come and let us know. And you can reach us at dataethics4all.com and dataethics4all.org, at our website. And you can even reach us at all of these channels: LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube.
Yeah.
And come join our community and let us know how we can use your information to make sure that everyone is well informed on all of these topics. Thank you for
Brilliant.
joining us, and thank you for a very engaged audience here. We will just wrap up now. and we will meet
Brilliant.
you again for the next week. Sam, you have anything to say?
I do, absolutely. Yeah, I want to wish everyone a great day, and thank you for joining us for this particular talk. It's been a really fruitful and really interesting discussion. We've got lots more to talk about, so please join us, come to our community, join us as a member, and come to DataEthics4Allᵀᴹ if you want to find out a little bit more about what we're doing and our projects and programs. And yeah, we are now nearly 1,000 strong members, so yeah, please come along and join us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
take care. Bye bye, everyone. Bye.